Oh my goodness, the Las Vegas Raiders just revealed who they want to draft, but is it just a smokescreen? Plus, the Raiders have some cornerbacks visiting the facility if they want to go defense high in the draft. And Mac Jones and Bill Belichick are not getting along right now with the New England Patriots. Could Mac Jones be headed to the Raiders if the Raiders cannot find their guy in the draft? We're going to talk about all this and more. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want more Raiders content from me, WiFiWillie. So the Raiders had a top 30 visit. The top 30 visits, you only get 30 of them for every single draft. They're going to visit the facility and have a deep conversation with the Raiders, and the Raiders are going to decide if these players are the right person to join their football team. And they had Joey Porter Jr. visiting the Raiders today. He's also set to visit the Saints, the Panthers, the Ravens, Commanders, and Eagles as well. So they're taking a look at cornerback here. Even though they've signed some players like Duke Shelley, David Long Jr., Brandon Faison, still have Nate Hobbs. Raiders are still looking at the cornerback position, trying to find a number one guy and a long-term solution. In addition to Porter out of Penn State, they also had Ringo from Georgia visit the Raiders facility, a top 30 visit with Keele Ringo. And this guy is a physical freak. Young guy running that 4.36 40-yard dash. Raiders could possibly look at him, especially if they're thinking about trading back from that number 7 overall pick to get more weapons on defense. Now, the main thing concerning Ringo is, can he be a starting corner in the NFL? Will he develop? He's a young guy, 20 years old, 6'2", 200 pounds, and a physical freak running that quick 40-yard dash. But he has struggled at times, only picking up 2 interceptions last year, 1 dropped interception, and had a ton of games and didn't really do that well against, teams like Ohio State, some of the big teams, some of the teams that have, a great passer and CJ Stroud just the past year. But he would be a great outside corner for the Raiders, since the Raiders seem like they have a lot of people who can compete at the slot. The big problem with Ringo, though, is his size and speed just allowing him to compete at the college level? Does he actually have the tools to be successful in the NFL, or is he just getting lucky right now because he's in college and just a physical freak? Once he gets to the NFL, everybody's fast, everybody's strong. He's not going to be able to catch up just because he's the most athletic. And Joey Porter Jr. does have great size, not insane speed like Ringo, but played less games than him last year and was still pretty much just as productive. Did not have an interception last year, but did force 12 incompletions, and also is an outside corner. That's what he's going to be doing, and he has that length to compete. The question is this guy worth like a number 7 overall pick? Is he worth a high draft pick in the first round? I think this is a kind of guy who is going to be solid, is going to be a safe pick, but I don't think you're going to want to use a high first round draft pick on this guy. I think if you're going to maybe consider Joey Porter Jr., you're going to think about trading back, because this guy should be available around then. But reports are coming in saying that Joey Porter Jr. does have a higher football IQ than somebody like Ringo and is a great press corner. He's just not as much of a gifted athlete. So I think it's going to come down to Patrick Graham, what he thinks he can get out of somebody like Ringo compared to Porter if they are debating between these guys. And you have Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk talking about how Mac Jones and Bill Belichick are not getting along. And we all knew this was happening. You see Mac Jones, screaming at the Patriots offensive staff during the games last year. But we know Josh McDaniels, Genius Josh, has always loved Mac Jones, right? They had a little hug after the game they had last year, Raiders versus Patriots at Allegiant Stadium. And Mac Jones has 2 more years left on his contract. According to Mike Florio, of the teams who did talk to the Patriots, apparently Bill Belichick did make some calls, did put Mac Jones on the trade block. This is according to Florio. I sort of trust this source despite the fact that now the Patriots are trying to cover it up and say that this story is BS. I think it's real. I think it's legit. But the 4 teams who Belichick supposedly talked to, one of them was the Raiders. And we have to ask ourselves, if the Raiders do not find a quarterback in this draft, or if there's somebody who they wanted but isn't there at the number 7 overall pick, or in the 2nd and 3rd round, if they find it, a better use of their pick to target defense or another offensive skill position other than quarterback, they could really, walk out of the draft and not really have a quarterback. And I know some people say, oh, well, they could tank for Caleb Williams and they could tank for Drake May. Look, as much as I want to crap on Josh McDaniels, I don't think they're going to have as bad of a season as they did last year. I think they're still going to at least win 6 games, maybe 7 this upcoming year. I think McDaniels did not like Carr, and maybe that's going to remedy something now that he has his guy in Jimmy Garoppolo or Brian Hoyer, right? If we need to go with Brian Hoyer. But I think it is a possibility that if the Raiders don't find somebody that they like in the draft, maybe they call the Patriots. You're giving up a pick in the future, in the 2024 draft, maybe 2025. Belichick, it's already leaked that he's not interested in Mac Jones. He's been shopping the guy. So how much value can Belichick really get at this point? And we've seen Belichick historically be really nice to McDaniels, giving away Jarrett Stidham for a 6th-round pick, letting a lot of the Patriots staff walk and join the Raiders coaching staff. Maybe Belichick, if he's really not sold on Mac Jones, didn't like the fact that Mac Jones seeked outside help last year to solve some of the Patriots' offensive problems. Maybe Belichick would give Mac Jones up cheap if the Raiders are not able to find their QB in the draft. But the big news is the 2023 draft and some leaks that came out about what the Raiders plan to do at the quarterback position. Is it all smoke? And like I said earlier, I do not think the Raiders will have a higher draft pick next year unless they make some kind of trade. I think they are at least going to win 6 games this upcoming year, possibly more. So I think they really have to look at this draft for a quarterback. I don't think we're looking at Caleb Williams or Drake May in the future. And when it comes to your boy Q, somebody who works for Raider Nation Radio, and what he heard from Todd McShay, it's really kind of interesting what the Raiders may do at quarterback and what they're trying to do and what they're trying to make the rest of the league think. So we're going to break down exactly what was said, and we're going to let you know what interpretations could be possible based off this information. Now, what your boy Q has said is that McShay, in this pre-draft conference call, when talking about QBs, the Raiders have pick number 7. He says from his understanding, from his sources, and talking around the league, probably the Raiders or people who work with the Raiders, if it's not CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, the Raiders are not interested. Now, a little contradictory because the Raiders just attended, Anthony Richardson's pro day. They had people like Champ Kelly at Will Levis's pro day, and they also had a top 30 visit with Will Levis this past week, and they are going to visit with Anthony Richardson, have a top 30 visit with him on Friday. So either, they could put this information out there, but what does it mean? What does it mean? Now, I think there's 2 possibilities here. 3, everything about this is true, and they're really just only interested in CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, and they're not going to take a quarterback if they're not available. Yeah, we'll see. By the way, we know the Raiders did inquire to trade up for that number 1 pick from the Chicago Bears. The Panthers ended up grabbing that, and we have heard rumors that they are interested in the Cardinals' number 3 pick. So maybe that could back that up, and that could be a possibility that they're legitimately only interested in Stroud, only interested in Bryce Young. Maybe, right? But like we said, they had all those visits. They had, these future meetings with some of these QB draft prospects. They've even met with Jake Haener too during the Senior Bowl and have had private meetings with him, somebody who could be there in the 3rd round. That's a possibility. Now, my second interpretation of this is perhaps the Raiders know that there are teams out there, maybe a team like the Buccaneers, maybe a team like the Commanders, who would be interested in trading up to get the Raiders' number 7 pick and to grab somebody like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson if the Colts don't select him and he falls, right? So maybe the Raiders are trying to send a signal to the rest of the league, hey, we actually are not interested in a QB outside of these 2 guys, and those QBs are going to be gone with the first 2 picks, right? So hey, hit us up and see if you want to trade up. Commanders, hit us up. Bucks, hit us up and see if you want to trade up so we can stock up some more picks and help build this team around Jimmy Garoppolo. That's a possibility. Or the Raiders are trying some tricks here and trying to send some smoke screens. And this is what I hope they're doing, because I do think they need to select a quarterback in this draft. It comes down to whether or not they're going to evaluate these players and think they're good enough. I really hope that McDaniels is able to find somebody who he really likes in this draft, because like I said earlier, I don't think we're picking this high next year. I don't think we are. This is a rare opportunity that we haven't had since 2019, the 2019 draft. Now, the Raiders could be sending a smokescreen, making sure that other teams do not try to trade in front of them to select somebody like Will Levis, select somebody like Anthony Richardson, and maybe other teams will be thinking, they're not interested in any of these QBs outside of the top 2, so we don't have to worry about trading in front of the Raiders. I'm thinking teams like the Falcons, right? Or like the Commanders and Bucks, like I mentioned earlier. So it's possible that the Raiders are all just trying to trick everybody, and maybe they really are interested in Will Levis and Richardson, and maybe they really do think there's a possibility, if they play this right, if they fool enough teams, that one of these guys can fall to them at pick number 7 and they can get their QB of the future in the 1st round and use the rest of their picks to just stock up on defense. And I've been watching some games between Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, because I really do feel like if the Raiders do select a quarterback in this upcoming draft, somebody who's actually going to maybe become the franchise QB, I really do think it's between these 2 guys. Now, Will Levis, I think you should put a asterisk next to his previous season in 2022 because, he had less yards than before, a lower grade, he was dealing with injuries. And when you watch him in 2021, this guy is a dual threat quarterback. This guy can take some hits. This guy has tons of strength and energy. And in my opinion, I think he's as mobile as Anthony Richardson. Like in terms of like what he's actually going to do in the NFL, I think this guy is capable of doing a couple of design runs. I think he will take off if the situation calls for it. Obviously, Richardson is just better. Richardson's a little more durable, but I think the most important thing here when it comes to Josh McDaniels' offense and what the Raiders need at the quarterback position, if we really want somebody to compete immediately with Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm looking at this adjusted completion percentage. Now, adjusted completion percentage is different than a regular completion percentage according to PFF. This is one that takes into account if the receiver dropped it or the receiver messed up or it's just like a botched play or like a screen pass where like it's a dead play from the get-go. And you got Levis there at a 75%. And Richardson, even when you give him the benefit of the doubt with the adjusted completion percentage, is that he's at 64%. So Richardson, when you just watch the tape, he's just not accurate. He's not ready. Yes, if you want to run the football crap load, he's your guy. And so I think a team like the Colts, he makes sense. Maybe even the Ravens, since they're struggling with Lamar Jackson, I think Richardson makes more sense for them if you're running that type of offense. Obviously, he's a physical freak. He's super gifted, but like ideally, I would think it would be cool if McDaniels likes Richardson and really believes in him and is able to get him. I do think the Colts at pick number 4 makes it a little more difficult for the Raiders to possibly grab Richardson. I also think the Atlanta Falcons, who are sitting right behind the Raiders at pick number 9, may be interested in sneaking up and grabbing somebody like Richardson. If we're looking for somebody to immediately compete with Jimmy Garoppolo, somebody who I think could possibly even start the second half of the season for the Raiders, and if we're being realistic and thinking about what Josh McDaniels is trying to do on the offensive side of the football, short, accurate passing, maybe we don't need Anthony Richardson's amazing deep ball, which is better than Will Levis. I think it's quite possible that maybe McDaniels is sending out these smoke screens and maybe he actually does want Will Levis and does think that he could be pretty productive. And you see all these reports, Chris Sims being down on Will Levis. You're seeing, a lot of people trying to tank this guy's stock a little bit. And the pro day kind of boosted it up a little bit, but you see his stock kind of falling. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing if you're the Raiders and if you're a fan of the Raiders, because if they could pick and get Will Levis at number 7, and if he really does fall, because people fall in love with the QB who does backflips rather than QB who's accurate throwing the football, I think the Raiders could end up getting a steal and end up getting a guy who is also very athletic, could make some unscripted plays, sometimes even better than somebody than like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, obviously the Georgia game was great, but not many, great playmaking ability and a lot of unscripted plays like you see from Will Levis often. So I don't know. I think it could be interesting. Let me know what you would want the Raiders to do at pick number 7. And let me know as well if you think the Raiders are really only interested in CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, or are they just sending out a smoke screen and they want either Richardson or Levis. Let me know in the comments below. My name is WiFiWillie, man. Check out some of these other videos if you have not seen them. If you want more content from me, make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel so we can reach more people like you. Peace out, everybody, and I hope you have a good one.